What would you do if the person who promised forever walked away at your weakest moment without ever knowing your true worth? This channel is where silence breaks, secrets surface, and truth arrives too late. Here, you'll hear stories of quiet strength mistaken for weakness, of loyalty repaid with betrayal, and of love discarded for greed. These are stories where hospital beds replace wedding vows, where assumptions destroy marriages, and where dignity becomes the most powerful form of revenge. Every story exposes the hidden side of relationships, the lies whispered behind closed doors, the cruelty masked as confidence, and the shocking moments when the truth finally comes out. If you believe the most painful lessons come wrapped in love, if you know that healing can be louder than anger, and if you've ever watched someone realize too late what they lost, then you're in the right place. These stories aren't just told, they're felt. Silence was the foundation of the marriage, not because there was nothing to say, but because saying less felt safer. Love was shown through consistency, meals on time, bills paid without discussion, problems handled quietly. Questions about money never came up, and when they did, they were brushed aside with trust instead of numbers. That trust was real, given freely, without conditions. What wasn't visible was how intentional that silence had been, how carefully independence was kept out of sight so affection wouldn't turn into competition. Every achievement was softened, every success minimized. Late nights working were explained away as helping others. Extra income folded neatly into savings no one asked about. It felt right at the time. Love was supposed to be about partnership, not power. But that silence created a space where assumptions grew. The belief settled in that dependence existed, that control was automatic, that respect didn't need to be earned anymore. Subtle changes followed. Decisions started being made alone. Jokes landed a little sharper, comments a little colder. Gratitude disappeared first, then patience. There were moments when eyes lingered too long on other people's lives, comparing, calculating. Conversations about the future became one-sided, shaped by what was believed to be leverage. What hurt most wasn't the misunderstanding, it was realizing how easily loyalty had been discounted. The absence of questions revealed everything. Someone who truly cared would have wanted to know more, not assumed less. The silence that once protected the relationship had become a shield for arrogance. Behind closed doors, plans were forming that didn't include fairness, legal advice sought quietly, exit strategies discussed with others, not with the person sharing the bed. All of it built on the false comfort of thinking there was nothing to lose on the other side. The truth was simple and devastating. Independence had never been hidden out of fear, but out of love. And love, once taken for granted, doesn't warn before it withdraws. That silence would eventually speak louder than any confession ever could. The ceiling lights blurred together above the hospital bed, each one humming softly, like they were in on a secret no one bothered to explain. Pain came in waves, dull and exhausting, but the deeper ache was the empty chair beside the bed. Hours passed without footsteps, without a hand to hold, without a voice asking if breathing still hurt. That absence said more than any argument ever had. When the nurse entered, the expression was careful, rehearsed. Papers were handed over with instructions spoken too quickly, words like signature and procedure mixing with medical jargon. It took a moment to realize these pages had nothing to do with recovery. No get-well wishes, no prayers folded into the margins, just legal language, cold and final, spelling the end of a marriage while tubes were still taped to skin. That was the moment everything became clear. This hadn't been sudden, it had been planned. While bodies were weak and defenses lowered, someone had decided efficiency mattered more than decency. Hospital walls were chosen because resistance would be minimal, because vulnerability made compliance easier. Commitment didn't dissolve from fear or heartbreak, but from calculation. Memories replayed differently after that. Missed visits explained away his work, phone calls that felt rushed, questions never asked, concerns never voiced. Behind the scenes, conversations had been happening elsewhere, with lawyers, with advisors, with people who didn't share a life or a last name. Loyalty had been quietly replaced by strategy. The signature was given with shaking hands, not out of agreement, but exhaustion. Fighting felt impossible in that moment. The body needed to heal, and the heart didn't yet understand how deeply it had been wounded. Walking away was framed as mercy, as doing what was best. But mercy doesn't come wrapped in paperwork served at a bedside. Later came the realization that love hadn't disappeared overnight. It had been drained slowly, siphoned off while pretending everything was fine. The hospital wasn't the breaking point. It was simply the stage chosen to reveal the truth. Some betrayals don't scream. They wait until standing back up feels impossible. The truth didn't arrive with drama or confrontation. It slipped out casually, the way reality often does when it's no longer trying to hide. A shared acquaintance mentioned a project, then another, then a number spoken without importance, as if it had always been common knowledge. That number hung in the air longer than it should have. It explained everything that had never been questioned. For years, assumptions had guided every decision made on the other side of the marriage. The belief was that success belonged elsewhere, that contribution was smaller, that walking away would come without consequence. That belief fed entitlement. It justified cruelty. It made betrayal feel safe. Greed didn't look like hunger for money. It looked like hunger for control, for advantage, for being the one who leaves first. The silence about income had been mistaken for weakness. Stability was mistaken for dependence. While independence grew quietly, plans were being made loudly behind closed doors. Legal strategies replaced conversations. Exit plans replaced effort. The marriage wasn't abandoned because it was broken, but because it was assumed to be replaceable. When the truth surfaced, it cracked something that couldn't be repaired. The calls started then, hesitant at first, curious, then desperate. Questions poured out that should have been asked years earlier. How long? How much? Why wasn't this ever mentioned? Each question revealed more than the answer ever could. Respect hadn't been missing because of secrecy. It had been missing because it was never offered. Regret followed fast, but it was clumsy and self-serving. Apologies centered on shock, not remorse. Fear, not accountability. The realization hit hard. The person who had been discarded in a hospital bed wasn't powerless at all. The power had simply never been used as leverage. What hurt most wasn't being underestimated, it was being reduced to a calculation that failed. Greed had demanded certainty before loyalty. By the time reality corrected that mistake, everything worth saving was already gone. Some truths don't save relationships, they only expose who never deserved them. Anger was expected to come first, loud and consuming, but it never really did. What arrived instead was clarity, the kind that settles in quietly after the chaos has passed, when the body heals faster than the heart, and silence finally feels safe again. There was no urge to call, to explain, to demand answers. Everything that mattered had already been revealed through actions that couldn't be undone. Healing didn't look dramatic. It looked like getting up early, returning to work, rebuilding routines without explaining them to anyone. It looked like peace replacing panic, confidence returning without announcement. The betrayal had stripped away illusions, but it also removed the need to prove anything. Life began to move forward, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. From a distance, the unraveling became visible. Regret has a way of making itself known without words. Mutual friends spoke carefully. Messages came late at night and went unanswered. Questions were framed as concern, but the fear underneath them was obvious. The realization had finally hit. What was thrown away wasn't disposable, and what was assumed to be small had always been solid. There was no celebration in watching that understanding sink in, just a quiet acknowledgement that choices have consequences, even when they're made with confidence and cruelty. The betrayal that once felt personal now looked shallow, driven by ego and short-term gain. The secrets exposed weren't just about money or success, they were about character. Dignity became the response. No arguments, no public explanations, no need to rewrite history. Silence, once used against me, became the boundary that protected everything rebuilt. While one side chased closure, the other had already found it. The most shocking truth wasn't that love ended, but that it survived long enough to transform into something stronger, self-worth. The need for revenge faded when it became clear that nothing hurts more than realizing too late that loyalty was mistaken for weakness. The final punishment was never delivered by words or actions, but by absence and the knowledge that the best thing ever lost would never return. If this story spoke to you, don't walk away in silence. Like the video to support stories that deserve to be heard, and subscribe so you never miss another truth revealed too late. These aren't just endings, they're awakenings. Stay with us for more stories where dignity wins, secrets unravel, and the quiet ones rise. Until next time, remember, some losses hurt most when they're finally understood.